Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Martin Onimus, co-founder of the PDM SWUG Group and crew chief for the ACS car. Our driver today is Tom Cote, and while he finishes up the pit stop he's currently on, let me tell you a little bit about Tom before Tom tells you a lot about file management. Tom was an early adopter of SOLIDWORKS starting in 1996. Tom started his career as a mechanical design engineer before transitioning to CAD and PDM administration and eventually becoming an industry leader in PDM administration and implementation. In the early days before SOLIDWORKS, Tom was also a seasoned user and admin on other CAD systems, such as Unigraphics, AutoCAD, and CADKey. In 2011, Tom founded Applied CAD Solutions. Here he administrates, installs, migrates CAD data, and trains SOLIDWORKS and PDM users throughout the world. Tom has actually installed and implemented over 60 PDM systems worldwide. In his free time, Tom continues to learn about all things CAD, SOLIDWORKS, and PDM, and then shares that knowledge with others. He has been active in the SWUG community for over 15 years, having been one of the co-founders of the CMA SWUG. He later started the Pirates of Tampa Bay SWUG, and then became a co-founder of the virtual PDM SWUG. Tom has presented at SWUGs all over North America and was the presenter for the very first SLUGME. Without further ado, here is Tom Cote.
Hello, I am Tom Cote, CAD and PDM Admin Specialist. I'm here in Florida in the USA on the Eastern Standard Time. Today we're going to talk about SOLIDWORKS file management in relations. Our agenda will include how files are connected, broken references, search order, duplicate file names, and a few other topics inside. Let's start this by talking about how files are connected. SOLIDWORKS files have pointers that reference other SOLIDWORKS files. And this creates a link or a chain of a link between them. So we have two parts. We have an assembly. The assemblies have pointers to the parts. Drawings have pointers to the parts or the assembly. Now what happens if a file is moved or renamed? SOLIDWORKS creates a broken reference. It doesn't know where to look for that file, or it doesn't know what the new file name is. So we've all seen this message. I'm sure everybody's seen it. If you're a seasoned SOLIDWORKS user, you've seen it in the past, no doubt. You're unable to locate, and it tells you the file name. What do you want to do? Do you want to browse? Do you want to suppress that component or suppress all components? Gives you an option, but let's break this menu down a little bit. First thing it's doing is it's giving you time. It's giving you a countdown. Anybody that's been on SOLIDWORKS for a while might remember that SOLIDWORKS never used to do that. If you walked away from your computer for a half hour, it would wait and hold there for that half hour for you to tell it what to do. So that's been a great enhancement SOLIDWORKS has done over the years. And it gives you a report. In this case, I selected to suppress the component, so it put one file was suppressed. If I view the report, it comes up and it tells me that the instance of the following was suppressed or opened from a new location when the file was opened. And what does that tell me in this case? I'm unable to locate the file. And within SOLIDWORKS, another enhancement that SOLIDWORKS made a few years ago is they put the little yellow caution sign with the exclamation in it. Now what that tells you is that the file is suppressed, but it's suppressed because it couldn't find it. I can just look down the feature tree and instantly know what ones it couldn't find versus what ones I intentionally suppressed. Let's take a little bit deeper dive into the menu and what does it actually tell us. What it tells us is the first option could be that you rename the file, and now SOLIDWORKS does not know the new file name. You rename the folder and SOLIDWORKS does not know the new path. You move the file and SOLIDWORKS does not know where you moved it to. Or it's possible you just deleted it, and in that case, so sad, we really can't help you. Can't help you get your files back if you deleted them. Taking another little bit different deep dive into this, what are some of the options and things we can do? First of all, we can say, don't show me again. If you select that, it remembers what you'll pick after, whether you pick browse for file, suppress this component, or suppress all missing. And it'll do that for the future. Don't have to panic if you ever want to get the menu back. So if you said, don't show me again, browse for all, it's going to mean every single assembly from here on, whenever you open it, if it's missing a file, it's going to ask you to browse for it automatically. Well, you have the option here inside your system options, messages, errors, and warnings. You can go over to unable locate file. Would you like to find it yourself? Seems counterintuitive. You check it because it tells you checked messages will be shown again. So you check it when you say OK and come back. The next time you're missing a file, it's going to pop up this dialog box. Now let's take a look at the search order that SOLIDWORKS uses to open files. The first thing it does is it uses RAM. Whatever file you have open in RAM, if it's the correct file name and it's already open, SOLIDWORKS will use it. So if you have a file called bracket, even if it's the wrong bracket, SOLIDWORKS is going to try to use it because it matches the file name. This helps go along, and it makes us reiterate all the time, best practice is to always use unique file names. The second place SOLIDWORKS is going to use is the user-defined paths, which is tools, options, file locations, reference documents. We're going to talk more about this coming up, but these settings are additional directories that SOLIDWORKS will search in, which is nice if you know all my files. I moved them from folder X to folder Y. You can put folder Y in there. And that's great, and that'll help speed up finding your files. But once you save that file, if you no longer need it, now you're slowing SOLIDWORKS down every single time you open any other SOLIDWORKS files. Again, we'll talk more about that one coming up. The last path you opened a file from, and then recursively searching the path where the reference document was last saved. It's a lot of words. The best we could figure out it means is to say if you opened your part 2 or P2 file from SSTT, and then you saved it in, what is that, X, Y, and Z. It's going to try to merge those together in particular orders to see if it can come up with and find your files. It's kind of a little different thinking. As you can see in here, it's mashing them all together and trying to come up with a path where it can find your file. Then actually, step 4 is almost identical, except it changes a little bit if you drag the file in. So if you have File Explorer open, and you have SOLIDWORKS open, and rather than use File Open within SOLIDWORKS, instead if you just drag that assembly from Explorer into your assembly, it'll open, but it kind of tweaks this path a little bit. So it changes it up just a little bit. The path where the software last found a referenced document. So again, a little bit of a twister, but it's saying if the path for P2 was CSSTT, then it will look there when it's looking for P1, automatic. That's number 5. Number 6 is the path the reference document was located when the parent document was last saved. So in this case, what it does is it removes the drive letter in a nutshell. So it takes away that, and it uses the UNC path. So it's like the / machine folder. So if you're on a network drive and you don't put the letter and you do the slashes, it'll help find it by trying to mash that together. And believe it or not, 7 is basically the same as above, except it uses the absolute path. So it puts a letter in there and tries to find it. And number 8, if all else fails, SOLIDWORKS pops up the message telling you it can't find the file and asking you to browse for it yourself. Nobody expects anybody to remember all 8 steps. What the expectation and hope is that, first of all, SolidWorks is really doing a lot in the background to try to find your files before it asks you. But also, if you have doing all of this stuff, it starts taking a little longer to open your file because SolidWorks is checking all of these places in the background. Number 2 is one we're going to talk about further coming up. Here is actually the help doc. So if you go in and you say search routine for reference documents, I just screenshotted 1 through 4, but then there's also 5 through 8, and it scrolls down. So real quickly, I always like to talk about what the difference is between file references and external references. A file reference is the file path. It's the file, find references, options list, and it lists all the path name of every reference document. An external references is a reference from one geometry that makes one dependent on geometry from another file. So in this case, the hole in part A is dependent on the clearance hole in part B. And when you go into find references, it tells you this here. So it is a little different. That's about as deep as I'm going to go into external references, but we're trying to stick on file references. So reference documents. We said we were going to go back to this. If you add a folder path to the option, file locations reference documents, remember this is number 2 in the list. So the first thing it's going to look in RAM. Next one it's going to look at, it's going to use this if you have it turned on. Just because I listed C and house, unless I go and turn this on saying reference documents specified in file path, and this is in the external references tab, where the other one is in the file locations. This one is file locations. This one's external references. So I turned it on, and I also said include subfolders. So you might say, what's the big deal? So let's make a scenario. It's a rainy Saturday. Mom says, come on, we'll go make some M&M cookies today. So she takes all the ingredients out of the pantry, out of the house. She takes everything, puts it out for you, and says, I forgot the M&Ms. Go get them. Well, if you're searching the house, because that's where you're set to, it's going to use this order. It's going to go to the dining room. It's going to go to the entrance, the hall bath, the kids' bedroom 1, kid bedroom 2, kitchen, living room. It's going to go down the list. Well, it's actually a little more than that, because if we expand this, you'll see the dining room has the butler server and the corner curio. The entrance also has a coat closet. The hall bath has a linen closet and a medicine cabinet. The kid 1 bedroom also has a closet, a dresser, and a nightstand. Same with the kid 2. And then you hit the kitchen. So now you're going through. We keep going back to circling back to unique file names. It's going through this order, and it's looking in every folder going down. It hits the nightstand and says of kid 1, and it says, I found M&M. Well, SolidWorks is going to use that M&M. Because it found it. It's probably not the one you want. You probably wanted the one from the kitchen. But you don't know that. It's going to open it, and there you go. So, what's the alternative? You can narrow it down. You could go down and say, let's at least, instead of house, let's look at kitchen. And you would go in and you'd go to that option and you'd say set it to kitchen. But let's break kitchen down a little more. If I go to kitchen, I have my cabinets. I have my dishwasher, my pantry. My pantry has a back wall that has a floor, a shelf, shelf 2, shelf 3. Left side, same thing in the right side. I have a refrigerator and I continue down. So it still has to search everything. So you might want to put pantry and take out the cabinets and the dishwasher if you know. And I use this analogy if you were doing a library. Why look in your entire folder structure? Break it down to just where the library is and then search from there down. So hopefully that lets you know what I mean and gives you a good analogy to think about. So now let's look at how busy it can get. Believe it or not, this is only 9-part files, 2 assemblies, and their drawings. Now we have a mirrored part, we have a design table, we have an internal part, and look at how busy it can get. This is SOLIDWORKS thinking of all of these pointers going all the way around. But it gets a lot worse. Let's look at this one. As ugly as this looks, believe it or not, it is 6 part files, 1 top level assembly, 5 sub-assemblies, and their drawings. There's also an Excel file attached to one, but see how ugly all your references get. We have a library feature. So here we have a part pointing to a part, so we're referencing it with external references. So there's a lot of file pointing and everything, a lot of chain links that SOLIDWORKS has to keep track of. Well, what's one of the easiest ways to change a file reference? That happens to be Save As. Save As is a pretty easy way to get there. Open up your assembly, open up one part and say Save As. What's it going to do? It's going to update the reference to that assembly to point to the new one. There could be a good side and there could be a bad side to that. If you have all your history built into the other file and you do a Save As, you just created a new file. You might not want that. You might want to keep all your history with the other one, maybe using Design Binder inside and everything, and you're tracking everything. Now you have 2 standalone files. You might want to rename the other one and update your pointers. So, file is being referenced by other open documents. So, let's see. Save saves the current file that's open. It saves it to RAM, keeps everything open, lets you keep working. Perfect. Save As copies the file in RAM to the disk with a new name. The old version that was in RAM is closed without saving. That's an important piece to note. And any open documents that reference this file are now updated and pointing to the new file. Your references all get updated. Save As Copy and Continue copies the file in RAM to disk with a new name, leaving the existing RAM version with the old name open. No assembly references are updated. When might that be handy? If you don't have a vault system. And a lot of companies do this. They save their file as 1234. It's 1234, it's Rev 1, or your first release. Now you say, oh, I got to make a change to that. So what they do is they do a Save As Copy and Continue, and they save that file off, and in the new location, which is their historical folder, they call it 1234_Rev1. So now that's tucked aside with what it was when it was Rev 1, and now you're working on your new revision. So the base name stays as your new file name, or your file name as your release file. It's just a way you can get there. Save As Copy and Open copies the file in RAM to disk with a new name. The new document is open in SOLIDWORKS, and it leaves you the option if you want to keep the original document open. So you can have both documents open. You could have 1234 Rev A and 1234. And no assembly references are updated. Kind of another important piece is to know when you're updating your references. And remember, it's only the references of your opened assemblies. If it's referenced in 15 assemblies and you only open 2 assemblies, only those 2 are updated. Now, a beauty of this is when you go through and you do a Save As, when you're going through the Save As, when the dialog box actually gives you another chance to pick what you're going to do. So you don't have to always close it and reopen it if you pick the wrong one. It's kind of neat. When using the Save As from an open assembly, you can add a prefix or a suffix. Beautiful feature. We said that you could do it this way and also do a suffix and do your Rev 1. So note, using Save As from within SOLIDWORKS does not have an option to get all the drawings in the simulation files like a pack and go does. Kind of an important piece to remember if you're doing multiple stuff. So now we're back to, we already looked at the save as copy. Now we're looking at your include all reference components. And you can put a prefix or a suffix. So if you were going to do, let's say you were doing 3 options to your design. You got 3 new ideas. You don't know which one's going to work. You want to start laying them out. You don't want to hurt your original design. So now you want to call it option 1, option 2, and option 3. You can add a prefix, type it in there. And my recommendation, if you're going to do option 1 and your part number is 1, 2, 3, 4, do option 1 space or option 1 underscore, because it's going to concatenate those 2 names together. So if you don't put a space or an underscore, it's going to be option 1, 1, 2, 3, 4 with no spaces. So you'll be the word option, the number 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of goofy. So always got to remember that one. It's a lot of people, it seems to take them once or twice of doing, oh no, I did it wrong, to really remember it. You have an advance button. Let's select the advance button and see what we're going to get. When you go into advance, look at it. It gives you a chance to include virtual components. It also gives you a chance to include toolbox. Your broken references. It lets you pick your folder you're going to go to. It gives you another chance to do a save as copy. One more time. And it gives you a chance to also add a prefix or a suffix again. If you did it in the first dialog box and you called it option 1 underscore, and you come in here and you add a prefix again and you add option 1 underscore, it's going to be option 1 underscore, option 1 underscore, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as you remember that, it works well. Another option, this is kind of cool, another option that's not used much, I don't see this one used heavily, is make independent. So if you want to save a file, you can right click on that file and say make independent. And that make independent is basically a save as, but you don't have to open it and then go file save as. Just right click and say make independent. It's going to ask you if you want to save the component with the new name. You say yes. Now you're into naming it and going. It's kind of neat, kind of cool. Always more options. It's SOLIDWORKS. SOLIDWORKS loves to give us options, and we appreciate that. With the assembly open, you can go to Pack and Go. In your Pack and Go, now you'll notice you have include drawings, include simulation results. And you can also include your custom decals, appearance, and scenes. So when you're in here, you'll notice a little extra information. It tells you how many assemblies, how many parts, how many drawings, and how many other files. You still get your option for your location. One I didn't highlight was you can save it to a zip file, which is kind of cool. If you need to package this up, whether it's to save it for historical purposes, whether it's to pack and go because you need to send it to a shop, an assembly tech or something, you can send them the whole thing. And notice you also get an option to email after packaging, which is kind of neat. If you do a zip, you can email it right away. Now if you do pack and go from within SOLIDWORKS, so you right click on the file, you have your SOLIDWORKS, you do the flyout, and you do pack and go, it looks the same. It's basically the same dialog box you have here. Now let's take a look at some other options we can use to reestablish file references. One way to have an assembly model or a drawing reestablish a lost reference is to have the model open in RAM. Again, it's providing you have not renamed the file. But then you open it in RAM, and when you open the assembly, it'll automatically see it in its new location and it'll update its references. This can be time consuming if there's a lot of files. If you moved 50, 60, 100 files and you have to do that on every file, that's going to take you a while. It's going to be very tedious and frustrating. Another way you can repoint your file references is within the open dialog box is to select the references button, and you can repoint the references manually. One at a time is error prone, tedious, and time consuming. But what you can do, you'll see here, I did not change that color to green. That did it automatic. That's part of SolidWorks. So in this case, because the file name and the folder path changed and both went to green, it tells you I changed both. If the file name had not changed, the file name would still be in black, not green. So now within File Explorer, you can right-click on the file name, select SolidWorks Flyout, and select Rename. This is kind of cool. SolidWorks still gives you this option, but one thing you should be aware of is it's not very good about updating the where used. I would only do this if it's in the same folder. So you rename the file, you can rename it. There is locations. I don't know that I would personally use it that way. I don't know that I would trust it to get every location or rely on it. If it works, great, but I would look at other alternatives. So we don't want duplicate file names. That's a biggie. We know we don't want duplicate file names. You should never have them anywhere. I should not go into any company, go into their folder structure and find 15 mounting plates. That's bad practice. So let's use this as an example. SolidWorks will let you have duplicate file names by using the rules set by Microsoft. So if you're not in a vault that prohibits duplicate file names, I can have both of these are called motor bracket SLDPRT. They're obviously quite different. SolidWorks will let me do that. I'm not in a vault, and I'm in two different folders. SolidWorks will happily let me do that by following Microsoft's rules. But if I were to open one of the assemblies with the other bracket open in RAM, I would get this message dialog box. The document being open references a file with the same name as an already open document. It's basically telling me it's not the same file, different IDs, it knows it's different, and it's letting you open it though. And again, you have the don't show me again. Let's take a quick look at what it looks like in SolidWorks. So if I go from within SolidWorks and I open motor assembly, it opens just fine. Everything looks good. Now if I open the other one, motor assembly 1, it opens as well and it looks just fine. Everything's good. We have all of our references. Everybody's happy. Now, if we go and we open the motor bracket, and I go and open assembly 1, I'm going to get this dialog box. And I have some options that I can open without this document or accept it. Well, for giggles, let's see what happens if I say accept this file. Well, it's through all my made errors, but it actually brought in that bracket because it matches the file name. Not at all what I wanted, but I just wanted you to see what it was going to look like. It's not the right situation, but it is important to note and be aware of what's going to happen to you. All right, so now let's take a look at some ideas and thoughts of what you can do for file management tips when you're not using a PDM system. I'll go on my little soapbox and say I think everybody should be using SolidWorks or some kind of PDM system. So I would also say here, don't apply any of these thoughts of best practices blindly. You should understand why it's recommended, whether or not it applies to you, your company, and your situation. So the first one place for all. SolidWorks file folder structure in a separate library file structure. This will make it much easier to find things. Run backups, reuse files, everything about it says it's much easier. Use shortcuts and shortcut links instead of multiple copies. Link to a file. That's okay. Use the same screw in 5,000 assemblies instead of making 5,000 of the same screw. If you need to get to the same file from multiple locations, don't create copies of the file, create a shortcut to it. Shortcuts are links to the files or programs that are represented by icons with a little up arrow in the lower left corner. Adopt and follow a consistent method for file and folder naming. When managing files and folders, it is very important that you develop a proper naming schema for the kinds of files you create. And always be consistent and always stick to it. If you have coworkers with you, be adamant they follow it. Be that guy that calls them out for it, because you'll be thankful later when you can find your files and do everything with them. And you should consider if you want to use a part number and or description and or revision in your file name. Again, a lot of this is because you don't have a vault. If you were using a vault system, I'd probably be saying you should just name it by your part number and let the other information be there because it's part of a vault. But standardize your templates and formats and put them in a central and secure location. Have all users point to them. Make it be frowned upon that your user says, I like my own templates better, I'm going to use mine. Even if you don't have a vault system now, if you go to one in 2 years and everybody made their own, and I called it description, Frank called it DESC, Marty called it DESC period, bringing all of those in and syncing up all of your data is very, very difficult. If you all use description or whatever consistent term that's built into your templates and everybody uses it, it's much easier to bring in all your data. Standardize your file names. Everything should be unique. Description should be specific so that you can determine. Do not use duplicates and things of that nature. Separate ongoing and completed projects. That's kind of a tough one, but if you know you're done with a project, you might want to move it. Now you're back to you moved it and you're going to have a reference issue. So if you know you moved it, say, to completed and shipped jobs, and you know you need to go back to it 2 years later to make a change, maybe you have to add that folder or folders to your references while you're working on it. As soon as you're done, you take it out of your reference folder again. Use file properties and or tags. Tags are very little used. They're kind of cool, and they help you identify files. Next, back up your files. Constantly back up your files. It should never be without backups. Daily. Put them onto another drive, onto a tape. Take them off premise. That's so super important. People don't realize it. You want to always have those off premise on your backups. Save each drawing rev level as a PDF. It gives you something to refer back to. If you're not using a vault system, I highly recommend you make a PDF of every single revision, because now you're playing the shuffle game on names, putting your revision inside of your file name. Maybe it's only when you're making a new one and the latest doesn't have it, as we talked about. Who knows? But at least if you have the PDF, you know what you shipped to your customer. You know what you produced. You have that definite record. Save often while working. Always, always save. It's SolidWorks. Make sure you save. So let's talk about the last bit. Let's talk about some data management solutions. One is Windows File Explorer. Technically, that's a file storage system. It's not a very good one. I don't recommend it, but it is a solution. It's free. It's on your computer automatically. You can probably get away with up to a couple users if you're very meticulous and force all of this information. Another one, it's included with SOLIDWORKS Professional and SOLIDWORKS Premium, is PDM Standard. There's a little bit of setup, but it's not that bad. I do it all the time. It's okay. PDM Standard is very good. It's up to 9 or 10 users. I have seen it go a little higher. Yeah, you start running into a little bit of performance, but it works, and it works fine. It's a good little system. PDM Pro is an awesome system. It's kind of designed for 4 or 5 up to 500 users. Works great. That is a separate program you buy, but it is very, very powerful, and you can automate a lot of your tasks, and you don't run into, with PDM Standard, PDM Pro, you don't run into this whole file naming issue. Oops. And your last one might be a global PLM, and Enovia is now tied in with the 3D Experience platform. Maybe you want to look at something like that, but they kind of graduate all up the food chain, and it is whatever you want to get out of it. Personally, I think at least PDM Standard gives you something above your just relying on your file names, and that you did a good job naming them. I personally would like to thank you for attending this session. Hopefully you found it informative. If you've got questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, I am Tom Cote from Applied CAD Solutions. And on behalf of the entire SWGN community and the leaders, again, I would also like to thank you for them. Please check out some of the upcoming SWGN events. Go to swgn.org. Try to find some groups near you. This is becoming a big worldwide event, having SWG meetings. You get to learn, you get kind of free education, and it's fun. You get to work and meet with a lot of your peers. Hopefully we'll see you on the SWGN flip side. Have a great day. Bye now.
Well, everyone, I'm very happy to report that the ACS car was able to make it through to the finish safely. We would like to thank you all for joining us in this section of the race, and we hope you enjoyed the presentation on file management. On behalf of myself and Tom Cote, we thank you very much for joining us, and at this point are handing you off to the next crew chief and driver. Have a great day.